Hi, everyone. Welcome to the third and final poetry workshop in this series. My name is Abby E. Murray, and I am a poet. I am a military spouse. I'm a mom. I am a writing instructor, and I'm also the poet laureate for the city of Tacoma, Washington. Um, Here's just a little bit about how this particular workshop is going to roll in case this is the first one in the series that you are watching. These workshops are focused on discussing the healing possibilities that are found in poetry. Poetry is not a cure-all. It's not something that you can practice with guaranteed results of healing or recovery. However, we're going to approach poetry as a practice that leaves that opportunity on the table, the opportunity to heal, the opportunity to hear ourselves, really. These workshops are meant to be generative, which means that the goal is to generate new work that contributes to our own healing and recovery processes. At the beginning of each workshop, I'm going to share the text that I'm working with, just in case you want to look somebody up or you want to look up a particular poem. I'll share those. Each session begins with an intention, which is just a realistic statement of what our goals are for this particular session. Then from there, we move into a discussion of craft. I share some poems with you, and the workshops always conclude with creative prompts for you to take into your own writing practice through the week. If you'd like to send me any of these drafts, I'm happy to offer a bit of brief feedback. You can send them to gritcitypoetlaureate@gmail.com. Just a reminder, my background is in teaching and in poetry. I do not have a therapy background, and so my feedback will be given to you as a poet. Also, just a heads up, I'm used to teaching in my community face to face, and due to COVID, we've all had to kind of rearrange and make different approaches. That said, I'm recording this in my home where my 6-year-old kindergartner also lives, and if the doorbell rings, my German Shepherd is going to go bananas. Just fair warning. All right, so the texts that I'm going to be working with today I'm going to share some poems from Pamela Hart's book, Mothers Over Nag. And I am also going to share from Poetry Like Bread. It's an anthology from Curbstone Press. I really encourage you, if you ever come across a copy of it, to pick it up. But the poems in here can also be found in other places as well. And of course, I have my notes. Okay, so the intention for our workshop today is we'll consider what it means to write from the center. Where is our center? What is our center? The center of conflict or struggle, but also the center of our body, our breath, our lived experiences. That's it. We're just going to consider what it means to write from the center. And we're actually going to start that with a really short guided meditation. If you are new to guided meditation, all you really have to do is listen. Some days when you listen to a guided meditation, the words click and you're able to be present with the feelings and the thoughts that come up when you hear these words. And sometimes you're not. And that's really okay. It took me years to find any access point to meditation. So as you listen to the meditation, I hope that you are able to hear the words. I hope that they're able to bring you closer to your center. And if they don't, it's okay. I'm giving you full permission that it is totally okay if this doesn't click. Okay, so let's start this short guided meditation. The reason why I want to start the session with this is that it's really going to kind of inform, give almost a physical space for us to return to throughout the workshop, and when we listen to the poems that I'm bringing in as well. So that's why this is going to kind of center our discussion on our center. Okay, so you can't see my hand, but put your hand on your belly, just below your sternum, where your rib cage ends, that soft part of your abdomen. And close your eyes if you can, if you're comfortable. If you're in a room by yourself, staring at a screen, who's to know? Close your eyes if you can. Take 3 deep breaths, each one slower than the last. Tell yourself, my breath is becoming slower. And just let your breath slow down. Stay here for a moment, for as long as you need. You can hit pause if you need to. Take inventory of your breathing self. Think of your center as a location. What is there in this location? Is there a smoldering fire? Perhaps a small creek or a river running past? Is there broken glass? What is here in this center? Take inventory. Imagine that your poetry is here in this center, tucked like pages between your ribs. Your poetry is essentially your voice. Your poetry is available to you always. It cannot be stolen. It cannot be destroyed. Your poetry is with you as long as your breath is with you. Poetry is what you've experienced. It is what you imagine. It is what you speak. Again, stay with this moment as long as you need to. You can hit pause or keep moving through the workshop as you feel ready. But let's try and carry this presence, this even breathing, this awareness of how we're feeling, of who we are, and what we've experienced. Let's keep that heightened awareness as we move into the workshop. Writing from your center is to write with clarity and with conviction. It's a whole belief in yourself that cannot be shaken. To write from the center is to speak truthfully. Your center is where your body returns to when it is threatened, and also when it is at peace as well. So who are you? I am going to share a poem first from Poetry Like Bread. And it's actually the poem from which the collection gets its title. This is by Roque Dalton. Roque Dalton was born in El Salvador in 1935. He was a correspondent, a poet, a revolutionary. He was a student. He was executed in 1975. This poem, Like You, can be found in this collection, but you can also find it on poets.org, the bilingual version of it as well. So this is Like You by Roque Dalton. Like you, I love life, the sweet smell of things, the sky blue landscape of January days. And my blood boils up, and I laugh through eyes that have known the buds of tears. I believe the world is beautiful, and that poetry, like bread, is for everyone. And that my veins don't end in me, but in the unanimous blood of those who struggle for life, love, little things, landscape, and bread, the poetry of everyone. That's translated by Jack Hirschman. When I hear this poem, I can't help hearing it as a sort of manifesto, a claim. This is who I am. See where you and I overlap. The poem is just as much about poetry as it is about the speaker and who they are. I'm not sure, to be honest, if there's ever been a time in history that hasn't been fraught with injustice. But often the poetry that heals is written during times of upheaval. It's written during times of conflict and suffering. But this is poetry that heals us. Poetry, because it's always available, it can happen at any time. It can happen in any place. You don't need paper or pen, even. The line, poetry like bread is for everyone, is long-lasting and true. Whether you consider yourself a poet or not, that line goes on. Let's see. Next, I want to share some poems from Pamela Hart's book, Mothers Over Nag. This book won the Catherine A. Morton Prize. It was published by Saraband Books in 2017. Pam Hart is a kind person and a really, really sharp, talented poet. Her work often draws from her experiences as the mother of a soldier, as an editor for the Afghan Women's Writing Project, and as a human citizen who is concerned with the impacts of war, the impacts of violence, and the impact of struggling. Her poems, I think, to me, they witness this lasting impact. They witness this impact often on those who are experiencing conflict directly, and she writes from a place sometimes where she is experiencing conflict indirectly. And I find this really interesting, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to share poems from this text. Often when you're writing, you may feel that you are not the center of the struggle that you need to write about. But your center is still there. Your perspective is still yours. It still belongs. It's still valid. Pam was never sent to combat, but her son was. And she needed to write that. These are not her son's poems. These are her poems. I'm going to read actually the title poem from the book. And this is Mother's Over Nag. Powered by search engines and history, mothers navigate Google Earth, view the flashing lights of MRAPs as the cursors flag river or range. The mothers leap across time zones, check their satellite feed, sprint from screen to field, where you lie, split, calling their name. The mothers fly from Fallujah, Wanat, Quezon to Marathon, Hastings, Vicksburg. Their hands are epic, their bodies large, pouring into and out of you. And then lastly, I want to share this poem from the collection. This is called Praise Song. A morning prayer to all that keeps you safe. To body armor and weapons, the drill sergeant and the bullet, interpreter and phrasebook, to MREs and rocket launchers, also the forward operating base and your radio operator, the helicopter pilots and soldiers who donate blood, the medic and tourniquet, dog tags and helmet. I sing of your boots, caked in clay, rough with hours, of the IED you don't step on and the dog who finds it, the specialist and sniper, tip of the spear and rear guard. I want to praise the desert, the women of Afghanistan, Tajik, Pashtun, Hazara, may they be wild with fury. To your smile and your instinct, a praise song to next month and the next, each one bringing you home alive. What I really appreciate in these poems is that they give us the images, they give us the senses of these experiences. They're experiences of motherhood and also just of human caring. But we're given these crisp sensory details that we have to contend with as readers. You know, we have the MRAPs, we have Google Earth, we have the hands of mother, we have dogs, we have helmets. We have a split body calling out your name in the desert. The women of Afghanistan, there are boots caked in clay. These poems are using the things that are orbiting who we are, orbiting our experiences. And by capturing them here, we are able to not quite make sense. I don't want to say it makes sense because nothing seems logical now, but I'm able to trace the connections between me and what's going on around me, whether it's war, whether it's addiction, whether it is some kind of suffering that I'm seeing. I'm able to trace the connections between what I'm experiencing and who I am on the inside, what I'm remembering, and how I'm feeling, what kind of impact this is making on me. Reading these poems by Pamela Hart in tandem with Roque Dalton, it's kind of hard not to see, I guess, these poems, maybe all poems, as sort of manifestos, moments of declaring who we are, what we need, to survive. So these have gotten me thinking today. Actually, I'm going to share a poem of my own. And this comes from a couple of weeks ago. My daughter and I were on a walk. My daughter is young, and she asked me a question about our ancestors. And this is what comes of me sitting in my center, listening to what's going on there. This poem is called Identity Lessons. We are wearing the shadow of an old cedar when my daughter asks if our ancestors were Indians or the ones who murdered them. Murderers, I say, because it is true. We're quiet together. We walk slow. While she is young, my daughter can only give birth to questions, which run without end once spoken, like water beneath a glacier or roots under a city, carving the earth into continents that feed without judgment. Today, I am glad to know questions, at least, cannot be killed. We stop on our walk to notice how the same cedar that cools us snaps the heavy slabs of our sidewalk like crackers, as if to remind us how brittle we are. Thank you for letting me share that poem. All right. This brings me to the prompts to get you writing and to carry you into your week, hopefully. And then after, I'm just going to make a couple of recommendations for further reading. Okay, so your first prompt is write your own manifesto as a poem. This can be long or short. It does not have a length or a style requirement. Simply answer the question, what do you need to survive? Be specific. The second prompt is, think of a person you don't understand, whose words or actions, they confound you or frustrate you. This doesn't have to be a person who you feel really strongly about, you can't stand them, or someone who you love deeply. It just needs to be someone who requires you to think, to return to your center and listen. And I want you to write a poem about what you have in common with this person. I think that, at least for me, this is the prompt that's going to take the most time in thinking, and just kind of being present in myself before starting to write. Your third prompt is, you wake up in the world you've longed for. Write it. What does it look like? Who's there? What is there? What is happening in this world that you've wanted for so long? And lastly, write a metaphor for your center, the core of who you are. Is it a tiny island? Is it a planet? A constellation? Is it a fort? A flower blooming on a cactus? What is it? Come up with a metaphor for your center. That place in your breathing and in your thinking where things are most even. Things are most easily heard. Show this in detail. I guess that goes without saying. So those are your prompts to get you into the week. I also have some recommended reading. If you're interested in some of the books that I've read and the books that I keep on my shelf, that I keep pulling off of my shelf. The first, I use this in another workshop, is Writing Poetry to Save Your Life by Maria Mazziati Gillen. This book is half short essays on the process of writing and also publishing poetry, and it is half prompts. So every time you pick up this book, you're going to get something different from it. My copy is starting to fall apart. This is another great book that I keep on my shelf by Kim Rosen, and this is Saved by a Poem. This book has essays on craft. This chapter I just flipped to is The Medicine of Poetry. It also has poems, it has some prompts, it has a little bit of everything. So it's a really good resource to keep on your shelf if you're interested. I've enjoyed reading and working from that text. Also, I've used this before, Writing as a Way of Healing by Louise DeSalvo. This is interesting, and this doesn't actually talk about poetry in particular, but it offers research as well as personal narrative on the connections between healing and writing in a more prosaic sense. But I think applying it to poetry is still really relevant. One thing I like about this is that personal narrative quality. I feel like she brings research in and then and sort of complements it with her personal lived experiences. So that's a good text too. Also, the first poet whose prose I was really introduced to a long time ago was Natalie Goldberg. And in the book, Writing Down the Bones, this is my newer copy because my old one is like, you can't like touch it now, it just falls apart. But Writing Down the Bones, Freeing the Writer Within is a really great text, especially I've noticed for when you feel that you might have nothing to offer in poetry. When you are doubtful, I guess, or even suspicious, or conflicted, this text is really helpful during those moments. The chapters are really short often, small vignettes. It draws you into her life and experiences, but it really does give you some direction in the writing process and where that can lead toward healing or toward writing and understanding. Also, she has another book. She has several books, of course, but Wild Mind is also really good. Living the Writer's Life. This has also been a great resource for me. And I believe this one has prompts in it as well. So both of these books I recommend. If you have any questions about the workshops or the poetry prompts, I'm happy to answer those if you email me at gritcitypoetlaureate@gmail.com. Thanks for listening to these workshops. I look forward to seeing what you come up with, and I wish you a healthy life in 2020. Bye.